Yeah, I heard about the Laidlaw Programme. It was just in one of the emails, and I, just browsed through. I wasn't taking it seriously, and then I saw that there was a presentation about it, and I was on campus, and so I went in, and I liked the prospect of it being independent research, and so that stuck out in the email, as well as what they emphasized in the presentation. So I was like, it piqued my interest.
I'd actually seen it through my email, and my brother had then seen it. My brother was a year older than me. He'd seen it in his email as well, and he'd advised me to do it because I think I was applying for internships during the summer, and he kind of conveyed that this would be a very good alternative, and it was something that would let me maybe grow as a person more than a typical internship in a company.
What made me want to apply to the Laidlaw Programme was there was definitely something that drew me to it, the sort of independent nature of the program, and it wasn't, an internship for a financial company or something where, you'd maybe be doing sort of mundane tasks to sort of build up your CV and stuff. It really felt like, and it definitely wasn't like, although it sounds a bit hard to believe, it really wasn't for my CV or anything. It just genuinely sounded interesting.
It was a kind of format that I was kind of used to anyway, in terms, because I'm in the arts degree, so I'm trying to get used to scheduling my time appropriately anyway. And so I figured for ways for it to pay off and to continue practicing that kind of the kind of discipline, I thought the independent research posed by Laidlaw would be extremely beneficial towards like studies as well as whatever would be a product of the Laidlaw research itself. Yeah, it started really broad. My main issue was with the mind-body problem and how sciences that inherently address it, how they go about doing that and where its shortcomings are and things like that.
So I just was thinking about things that I would love to spend time on, and yeah, the first thing I thought of was just like walking around Trinity and just seeing the lack of recycling bins, and that just got me thinking into how are people feeling about recycling in plastics. And so yeah, I think generally I just went with what I thought would be fun.
So for my project, I was using graphene sensors that would detect how a road bike frame bends as you're pedaling, and that would then give you information on how fast you were pedaling and how hard you were pedaling.
Originally, my research project was about recycling, and I wanted to focus on sort of like a qualitative study about soft plastic use in Dublin households. But then with COVID, I had to change, and I ended up doing something I enjoyed even more, which was about food sharing and how that's changing during the pandemic.
I was racing at the time, and I was comically into road cycling, let's just say, at the time. And my road bike was made out of carbon fiber, the frame, and they tend to flex while you're pedaling, so the energy transfer isn't 100%. It's not 100% into the pedals to create forward motion. A lot of that is lost in deforming the frame. I was learning about that in material science at the time, and I thought that if you were able to measure how the frame deformed, you could get a lot of performance metrics out of that.
But the fact was, I did have to keep modifying the project, and I'd found this thing called future dangerousness. It's this legal thing in the States, and basically it's where psychiatrists and psychologists can give expert testimony about whether or not someone will continue to pose a danger to society without consulting with the defendant in person, which I just found extremely bizarre, but in line with what could come from mind-body sciences in general because of the mind-body problem. And so yeah, that got me up, especially over this summer. That got me fired up, and so I stuck with that.
In terms of finding my supervisor, I had emailed my material science professors in the mechanical engineering building. So I didn't realize at the time that my project was quite interdisciplinary, because there was a lot of engineering, there was a lot of physics involved in it as well, because there wasn't a lot of research being done in the mechanical engineering side of the college with graphene. So I'd emailed my professors, and they had kind of told me that it wasn't within their scope to and they didn't have the equipment in their lab needed to conduct this kind of research, but they told me that there was someone in the physics department who was.
Yeah, getting a supervisor was an interesting process because my project was not in my field of study at all. So, you know, I don't do environmental science. I'm very much like in the arts. So I was sort of like looking through all the academics in the geography and environmental science field, and I found Professor Anna Davies, and I was just talking to a few friends in the department about a few of the professors, and they were saying like, oh yeah, like she's really, really cool and like is doing all these amazing things. And so then I did kind of go from like just sending an email saying like, oh, like I don't know you at all, but this is what's going on. And yeah, she was very, very kind and immediately said, yeah, of course. So.
Yeah, I found the supervisors just because my Laidlaw question was formed based on what we were studying anyway, and it kind of arose from the topics that I was being taught. And so one of my professors was teaching about the mind-body problem, and another professor, he was much more approachable because, well, part of what my project touches on is racism, and his focus was on Black culture in the United States. And so there felt like there was some common ground between the two, and so it was a bit easier to approach them.
I emailed him and he was very, very accommodating. So he met me, I think 2 days afterwards or the next day, just to try and see if there was anything there and if we could get a proper research title out of it, because obviously it has to be adapted. And I went in with some false ideas, but my supervisor was very, very willing to work through them with me and to find a research project within what I proposed.
My first summer of research was different from my expectation in the way that I was just spending a lot of time by myself in the library, and that actually was a great learning experience, but it was difficult at first to really feel for the first time like, wow, like this is like my project and I'm completely responsible for this, rather than, you know, your professor saying this essay is due at this time and this is the question and you know how to start. But at the beginning I was that was a bit of a learning curve.
The project was different than I had anticipated because I had a lot of freedom in doing what I did. I had a lot more. I didn't anticipate the autonomy you would get and how it was very much on yourself.
Yeah, apart from COVID, I did not realize how many times I was going to have to edit my topic, because it started off broad and I had all these ideas, and then I realized it just wasn't attainable in one summer. And I needed to get my argument concise, you know, so you started off with this broad expanse of a theme and then you had to whittle down. And so I'd say it was interesting that my project had to keep evolving with me throughout the summer, but it was, in the end, it was for the better.
Yes, so there's a lot of positives to kind of draw out of the Laidlaw experience. One of the biggest ones was actually the leadership training. I'm not even joking. The leadership training was genuinely good. It was very interesting because, again, it was a lot about hardcore psychology and trying to understand yourself and see what kind of a person you were and how you could actually try and be a leader, because there's so many different styles and there's so many different personalities. You had to try to figure out who you were and then see how you could actually go about trying to contribute in the world in a professional kind of way.
To be honest, I didn't expect it to be so leadership heavy, and I'm really glad that it was. I think I was like, oh, we're just gonna have like a few conversations about you know, ethics in the workplace or something. Like really, I really thought it was gonna be a bit boring or something. But then I was really surprised that it actually felt, even though, you know, I know it's changing for the incoming cohorts to be even more leadership oriented, but I was surprised that it nearly felt as important as my research.
Yeah, the communications and presentations, that Laidlaw, the leadership activity, I used it before calling you. I was taking some deep breaths and channeling. It was good just to retain focus in general.
Everyone was so willing to engage in my cohort about the psychological aspect of it that it wasn't kind of embarrassing. I was with a group of people that found that interesting as well.
Yeah, I'd say in as much as the independent research itself is stimulating and useful, you need the leadership aspect to actually do something about the thing that you've researched. And so to learn how to go about that and to be taught how to do it properly is crucial, I think, because there will definitely be frustrations in translation. You're stuck with this knowledge that you can't do anything with because you don't know how to reach out and you don't know where to go. I'd say the leadership aspect is crucial to actually following through with what you've researched.
I think I've always liked the idea of being a leader, and I've always enjoyed public speaking and stuff like that. But I think even if you weren't like that, I just think that all the training we had in leadership during Laidlaw, I think I think the most important thing it does is make you a little bit more self-assured, like in a very simple sense. And I think now because even though I was confident before Laidlaw, I think what it's done is sort of validate my own abilities more. I think that was really useful. So now it's not just, confidence, but deep down you're like really nervous. It's like, I'm assured that I'm deserving of, for example, taking on research jobs, and I know that I can pretty much do anything, even though it sounds really cheesy. I can do anything that anyone needs me to do.
Yeah, the ALS groups and the Laidlaw Scholars, they were incredible. It was especially nice because in the ALS groups, we came from such a wide variety of backgrounds academically. And so I think what really helped push our discussions and really help us get to know each other was establish where we were coming from and then find a common ground within that. And so the conversations, they definitely took a multifaceted approach, and they could build, and you could learn about things that you thought you had known all about, and from a different perspective. It was extremely beneficial for yourself as well as the relationships you build.
I mean, it was definitely eye-opening because you get to hear a lot about other sides of research that you didn't necessarily think to look up yourself. So me as an engineer, I've put myself in a box of like, I look at STEM, I look at engineering, and I didn't look at psychology at all. So there was someone studying philosophy, and that is something that I would never really have touched before, and now I'm kind of looking into reading philosophy.
During my time in Laidlaw, the leadership element was really what, brings people together and like where you really interact with the other students, because of course, since it's independent research, some people are in the labs and some people are in the library. So that was a really nice social element as well, and also being able to learn alongside other people.
So in terms of remote working for a research project, I think there's a lot of value to be had in creating a good lit review, at least, of what's out there already, and using the time within the Laidlaw project to kind of cultivate a wealth of understanding about a certain topic.
So when we were given the notice that all of the research would have to be online, I was, of course, a little bit like, I can't do my project, especially because I'd planned for the second summer of research to be a lot of in-person surveys and things like that, which I think is quite common for these kinds of projects. But then it ended up being, I was just very lucky, and my supervisor had an opportunity for me to work in an organization that she was part of, just sort of I guess what would be considered a research assistant. But I actually was given a lot of agency over what I was doing. So it was sort of perfect for, because I guess if I was just doing what she told me to do, it wouldn't really be a Laidlaw project. So it was great that I could decide what I wanted to do. And it actually ended up being I was just really happy that things had worked out the way they did, because I realized wow, this project is even more interesting to me than what I was doing. So I guess, I was very lucky in that sense.
Yeah, I'd say just get comfortable with Zoom and get comfortable asking your professors to meet with you via Zoom. The in-person contact really just does help with the project itself. But in terms of resources, I'd say there are more available than you think. I'd say things are definitely accessible when it comes to, well, especially for arts and research and things like that. I was bummed that I couldn't go to the archive. However, there were so many scans and things available through all of these different legal websites and historical archives that really, it was achievable on its own. Yeah, if I could give any upcoming or prospective scholar, I'd say definitely on the topics that you're studying now, the things that you come across, if you have your own little tangent that you keep bumping into, I'd say you follow it. And if you follow that interest, something will come from it, or it will be applicable somewhere else. And I think it will remain relevant. It's not just you being crazy. So I think if you can trust your instincts and properly follow an interest that you have, that interest, I'd say, would be accommodated well by fellow academics, because they can recognize just genuine interest, and therefore they'll be willing to help you out.
The advice I would give to students applying in 2021 is to definitely choose something you're interested in, and choose a topic that you're interested in, but not only that, but something that you really care about and that you think that you might be able to add something, because that will just, I think, make the time fly.
The advice that I would have was, this is kind of drawing from my own research project, is that interdisciplinary projects are quite interesting, because I do engineering, so if I'd done a research project solely in engineering, I'm limiting myself a bit. So my Laidlaw project was in the physics department, and now I have a background working in the physics department, and I've kind of opened up a few doors because of that. And I think it's quite interesting. You don't get a lot of opportunities to do that, but with the Laidlaw Scholarship, they allow you to kind of explore things that are tangential to your course and kind of expand your mind, and then it opens a lot of doors.
Even after I got the scholarship, I was really nervous that I didn't belong, and that everyone else was way smarter, and that I was they chose me by mistake. So definitely just, it's okay, you can do it. It would be the advice.